All right, I'm going to dive into quick pictures of some of the things we built back there in those days. So here was the second interactive display that we built to run on a second computer. And you say, well, that's a pretty big box, isn't it? Well, yeah, because you couldn't get memories in those days that could give you bitmap memory. So you couldn't make a bitmap screen. So what you had to do was draw everything you wanted by deflecting the beam. If you wanted a big tube that had visibility and bright beams, that was a very high voltage, high accelerated beam that was hard to move. So it took big heavy amplifiers to move it. And that those could have very fast response so you could do it quickly was hard to do. So this box here, this box here contains the amplifiers to move the deflection. Oh, what generates the display? Well, you see this box over here has all the stuff that generates the deflection for the display. So the two together are the display system, separate from the computer. And that was, we had to get that custom made for maybe $80,000 in 1963 or 64 money, which was a lot of money in those days. So he says, all right, it was expensive to do that kind of research. So one of the things we wanted to do is try different kind of selection devices. So this was one of them, and Judy's sitting there holding that. We tried it, quite a few of them, and one of them we tried was this beautiful thing made out of wood. And here's another interesting connection with Vannevar Bush, or whatever it is, Van Bush, which I didn't appreciate at the time, but I'd seen when I was an undergraduate a device that's made up of a couple of arm linkages, and you move a pointer around a closed area of some chart you've made, and by looking at the wheels that are on there, etc., you can calculate the area that you've enclosed in this tour. And I wondered how that worked, so the professor said, well, a wheel that's moving sharp like that will only resolve the direction it's rolling. If it slides sideways, it won't resolve that component. So it just sums up the component of displacement in the direction it rolls. Well, that's all that this was then, is two different orthogonal wheels rolling on the surface. So it's related to the way that the differential analyzers, ball disk stuff worked, like that. But I didn't make it back, excuse the expression, to Bush at the time. But anyway, that's just one of all the nice things. Even though we tried a knee thing, you move your knee up or down by pushing on the floor or wiggle it sideways, and we picked the shapeliest knee to get the photograph, of course. And I made a head pointer, but the mouse really worked. The other thing is the parallel input. While you're pointing, what are you going to do? So we said, we built this, and my kids learned it. We talked to each other. Very simple. The letter A is the first one, B, two of them are C, this one alone's D. It's just totally binary. Turns out kids learn it very quickly. You just draw 1, 2, 4, 8, and 16 on their fingers and tell them how you count. And they pick it up right away and then say, look at the alphabet. So that makes a big difference when one's working. In 1967, we actually had a system going where we were having online meetings this way. But we went up, when we were going to get a time-sharing system, scaling again, you could get much cheaper, higher resolution speed on a small tube. So we get a bunch of them, we could time-share and put an industrial camera shroud to look at it. And this produced the video out in the room, and we time-shared, drawing the pictures on these little screens like that. And so that was an innovation that let us get a laboratory equipment out there. And so merely having two big frames like this are, display generator for 12 workstations out in the lab, and it took a lot of maintenance. You have to realize that. But out in the laboratory, a simple monitor and a key set and a mouse and a keyboard, these were standard sort of ways. And standard because of the way things operated was, well, we experimented with different interfaces, but this is the typical way. Sit there with mouse, key set, and shift to the keyboard when you get long literals. But the speed of operation, I don't think has been equaled since. And so I may be one of the first people in the world that had a private workstation in the office just to do my daily work all the time. And the other people worked out in this bullpen out here with all of them. It was a really interesting social thing, which was an important way in which everybody learned together about how to run it. Well, we wanted to give a show in that 1968 thing, so We borrowed some of the cameras and get a tripod up there and borrowed people to come help make camera working. And up in the Brooks Hall in San Francisco, we had a big video projector that could put something on that screen. You could see a little bit of it now that you could read from the back of the auditorium. And we had to we had to lease and go out and put temporary video links from SRI to the 35 or 40 miles up the city to run this thing. And up in the front, I was sitting at a console there, and there was a camera above looking down, and another one mounted on the console looking at me. And in the back of the room was our director, Bill English, who put all this together. And so while it was running, I could be demonstrating things and talking. And so we'll run a little bit of this footage. And you have to realize that it's the system we had been using and working with, so it could be used both as a presentation thing and as a work example. The world's first picture of a mouse. This was moving there on one half the frame. You could see the cursor moving on the other. And the way in which the controls would work was also pictured like that. And one of the things that was important, well, Jeff Rulifson had been with us a couple of years by then and was responsible for a lot of the architecture underneath. And he showed up today, sitting over here, but now works at Sun. So he came online, and unfortunately, when I took 20 minutes of clips from that hour-and-a-half video and put them together, as I picked when Bill Paxton came to share screen on it instead of when Jeff would, or you could have seen that. So let's run a little bit of that video, please. And so this is 1968, and if I'd known Bush was still alive and active, we made 3 years.
I hope you'll go along with this rather unusual setting and the fact that I remain seated when I get introduced, and the fact that I'm going to come to you mostly through this medium here for the rest of the show. And I should tell you that I'm backed up by quite a staff of people between here and Menlo Park, where Stanford Research is located, some 30 miles south of here. And if every one of us does our job well, it'll all go very interesting, I think. The research program that I'm going to describe to you is quickly characterizable by saying, if in your office you as an intellectual worker were supplied with a computer display backed up by a computer that was alive for you all day and was instantly responsive, instantly responsive to every action you had, how much value could you derive from that? Well, this basically characterizes what we've been pursuing for many years in what we call the Augmented Human Intellect Research Center at Stanford Research Institute. So look what else we can do in here. I've got this file that's structured. If I want to see what's in there, I can walk down the hierarchy levels and see, or return. But there's another thing I can do. There's a root I said I have here. So here, I'm afraid I'll need a different picture of the view. So here's what I drew with a picture drawing capability here. It's a slight map if I start from work, and here's the route I seem to have to go to pick up all the materials. And that's my plan for getting home tonight. But if I want to, I can say, the library, what am I supposed to pick up there? I can just point to that, and oh, I see, overdue books and all. Well, there was a statement there with that name on it. Go back. What am I supposed to pick up at the drugstore? I see, very interesting. All right. Market? Oh, I've already seen that. Produce and all like that. Gee, that's too much. Anyway, so we have this feature of structuring our material hierarchically, being able to move around it very well. When we get a hierarchy, such as I can show you here now, I can do things if I want to just say, I'd like to interchange produce and canned materials. Bingo. And they're all numbered rightly if I care to look. Interchanging them very quickly. Cans are going to get interchanged with produce. They do it and all gets renumbered. So I have ways of studying over, making different views, moving around, going to specified points, and modifying the structure. At the same time, I've seen that I have a repertoire of different entities, like character, knock off that character. replace a character, make that P. So I have entities of all sorts that I can say I want to do operations on, and this basic structure that I can move over and study and get about very quickly. So that is the essence now. That's the essence of the tool we have. There are a lot of details that I've left out for you. And now I'd like to stop a minute and just make sure you understand we're shifting from illustrative material to the real working stuff, in case you wouldn't recognize it otherwise. We've used this tool to do our daily work, and our system has been built, this time-sharing system, for about 6 months now. It's been working, and in that time we've gone from getting 1 console to getting about 6 working now, with 6 more due the rest of the spring. This is our 4th computer in which we've had this kind of a system, so we've learned a lot about the user features we want and how to be fairly skillful. But this next step about learning how, when you're faced with having this in your office all day, as I now do, in a very exciting sense, how do you put that to work for yourself? How do you organize your files? What kind of things do you do? So to get going on this, let's switch away from the tool we have here and talk about some of the general features of the program, some of the ways it's built, and get back a little later to the nature of our usage of it. So that program involves about 17 people, together with the special laboratory facilities we have. It's sponsored by government agencies exclusively, ARPA, NASA, and RIDC now, and in the past, AFOSR and ESD, and these were the people that first grub-staked us many years ago. All right, and it's been a goal-oriented pursuit for many years, and I think we can just go off and get a quick little picture I sketched to show. This is the staffing over the years from 1950 on, and it's had slightly bumpy history. During these years, there was only one of us. But I go back to where I was and say, let's continue on in this file. That link took me out to a different file, to a statement for that view, and I jump back to this file where I was, and now within this file I make a link to another to say, the HIRC is pursuing these goals. Basic goal, improve the effectiveness with which individuals and organizations work at intellectual tasks. What does their effectiveness involve then? Better solutions, faster solutions, solutions to more complex problems, with better use of human capabilities. Really thinking about that. But a corollary goal is, besides improving the effectiveness, to develop a system-oriented discipline for designing the means by which greater effectiveness is achieved. That's very important to us. The approach for this should result in the system-oriented discipline. Let me just show you how I constructed this file. You notice underneath there with that and that, there was just a link hidden here that went back to this view with a slightly different view parameters. To give you that view. All right, there's another one hidden there. It says the general approach for us, empirical. We're pursuing this monstrous goal, monstrously difficult, by building and trying empirically. And we're approaching it evolutionary-wise because we feel that it's a whole system problem. You need to get a person in that environment working and looking at the many aspects of his working system that are involved in his effectiveness. That's many more things than just these computer-aided tools. In a large system like that, we need to do it evolutionary-wise because we can't be analytic enough about it at any one point to decide what best our next thing should be. We can only decide from here, as well as we can analyze it, where we can invest our next resources to get the most return at an increase of the effectiveness of the system we have. And this item down here is the term bootstrapping applied in a slightly new sense. We're applying that to our approach, where we're saying we need a research subject group to give them these tools, put them to work with them, study them, and improve them. We'll do that by making ourselves be the subject group and studying ourselves and making the tools so that they improve our ability to develop and study these kinds of systems and to produce, in the end, this kind of system discipline. So it's been a It's a struggle doing it that way, but it's beginning to pay off.